Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Today, I am joined by founder and creator of Unleash Her, Catlin, who not only has already been a guest on our show, she's a dear friend of mine, and I'm really, really excited for this episode. Just a little bit of background on Catlin as well. Catlin empowers women to turn their passion into purpose-driven success, one step at a time. Now, for those that have been following Thrive and Shine Co. on Instagram or just following my journey, I talk a lot about business. I talk a lot about social media, and I'm really excited that today we're actually going to dive deep into something that is quite personal and I think will relate to a lot of people. And that is how women, a lot of very intelligent, rational women, how they end up in toxic or unhealthy relationships. So today we're going to talk about things like trauma bonds. We're going to talk about narcissism or narcissistic personality disorder. And just full disclosure, we're not psychologists. So this really is just a conversation about, things that we've experienced, that we've seen as well and observed, and some common traits, red flags to avoid as well. If you're in the dating scene, if you're starting to experience some discomfort, how to identify and walk away from, a relationship that could potentially be quite damaging. So, Catlin, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Phoebe. I love your intro. It's very full on and heavy, but yay, welcome, Catlin.
Yeah, Catlin, like you and I have, we both I guess, have shared a lot with each other. And I think that a lot of the time we hear stories of how people end up in relationships that they should have never been in the first place. And we wonder, how did that happen? How did that really strong, independent woman who's got really good discernment or intuition, how did this happen, or why this or why that? And obviously everybody's story is different. I share this from a place of love and understanding as well. Not only love and understanding for the listeners, but also love and understanding for people that are in a world of pain.
Yeah, hurt people.
Hurt people. And so this is also coming from a place of compassion and understanding. I think it's really important that firstly that we define what is narcissism? How is it that, some people fall into the trap of being in relationships with narcissists and have no idea until it's too late, or why does that happen? Yeah. And what is a trauma bond? Yeah. And how is it that, anybody can fall into that trap? Let's define what's a toxic relationship and narcissism.
Well, to start with, it is any relationship where you do not feel safe to share your feelings, emotions, where you're often having to compromise your own well-being for the sake of another. Now, I know I am a married woman, recently married. And
You're still in your honeymoon phase, actually.
Am I? If you say so. But I can attest to the fact that being in a serious relationship does require a great deal of compromise. It is a lot of give and take. It is a lot of hurt feelings. But the difference between that and an unhealthy relationship is that you notice for yourself as the survivor, you yourself are finding that you're the one who makes the compromise, whether it's for their own emotional well-being or because they are highlighting to you the areas that you need to work on emotionally, which is always the case. We always have things we need to work on. And the same is for every single one of us in every life stage. Whereas in an unhealthy relationship, the culprit is constantly highlighting, well, you did this or you need to do that, and not taking responsibility for themselves or accountability. Because this is something that is so personal for both of us. I was raised by a narcissist. So I have I'd call it an aged perspective of having to manage a relationship even still with that person. And I want to invite you to share what your thoughts are. This is something that you've been looking into since you discovered that was your story and your situation as a part of your healing process. So, I want to flip the same question to you. What is a unhealthy relationship and how would you define it?
First of all, thank you so much for your definition. In contrast, let's just start with what is a healthy relationship, because I think that's a lot easier to describe. Yeah. So a healthy relationship is a relationship where two healthy adults grow together and they are able to navigate the complexities of relationships together. When you look at relationships, a lot of stuff comes out. Like our partners are our best mirrors and they're the best gifts in the world when it comes to growth. Because when you are in a relationship, you're faced with all of your undealt with matters.
Your ugliness.
Yeah. It's the same as when you're in business. Like when you start a business, all your stuff comes up because, it's not like when you're employed and, you get to switch off at the 9 to 5 and you're not taking accountability and ownership of an entire organization. Mm-hmm. The same thing happens in dating and in relationships. When we're just dating and we're single and we're happy alone, there's no one that's going to rub us up the wrong way. There's no one that is going to trigger us in ways that are going to bring out the information and the parts of ourselves that we get to heal. Mm-hmm. And a lot of relationships have a dynamic where there might be an insecure partner, as in attachment styles, with someone that is secure or also someone that's insecure, right? So I think a healthy relationship is one where regardless of someone's attachment style or wounds, they are both able to healthily navigate that and grow together. Even the most powerful coaches, relationship coaches, share their stories of, like what they've been through to get to where they are.
Yeah.
And things still come up for them. So that's a healthy relationship. A healthy relationship is also one where, for example, a woman might share with their partner that they are feeling, they're not being seen or heard or, they're just feeling unsafe. And it's an opportunity for both parties to lean in and to grow and to learn and to heal and also for more authenticity to come out, for more growth. Now, in an unhealthy relationship, it's very different. Because in an unhealthy relationship, one partner might feel like they are standing on eggshells. Yeah. And they struggle to have those conversations with their partners because they know that, like from my own experience, from coming out of a toxic relationship, I know that sharing with my partner back then about feeling unsafe or feeling unseen or feeling not loved was very, very scary for me because my partner would literally turn into a different person.
Yeah. You're giving him ammunition to use later. You're giving him the blueprint as to how to make you feel more insecure and more unsafe.
That's right. And that blueprint actually occurred in the very beginning of the relationship. It actually occurred in the love bombing stages. Yeah. So he was idolizing me. Mm-hmm. So he was putting me on a pedestal, which is red flag number one. Yeah. And pretty much making me feel like I was the center of his world. Yeah. So in contrast, when that mask came off and when the real person came out and we were, a year into the relationship, what I discovered was it was a person that would shift blame, cause and create confusion, start to, I guess you could say, create a lot of gaslighting, and that is a term that I only started to understand literally this year. Yeah. Like I used to hear terms like narcissism, gaslighting, and I would just be like, this is like stuff that I just don't want to know about. And that's why we're doing this episode today because I think it's important that we educate ourselves on this stuff and we protect ourselves because this happens not just in romantic relationships but also in the workplace.
That's right.
And in friendships and in business partnerships as well. So we've got to understand that when you're dealing with someone that is shifting blame, causing confusion, or for example, one thing that I experienced a lot was I would ask a question and all of a sudden the person's answer, which could have been a yes or a no, would create so much confusion that I didn't even remember what I asked in the first place. Yeah. Because that person has now gone on this complete tangent and moved away from the topic. Yeah. And those are some red flags that we actually need to understand Because if someone is monopolizing and dominating conversations, or they're being completely overly loving in the beginning, they can turn into someone that becomes quite aggressive. And also turn into someone that will actually make you feel like your experiences are not real. Yeah, they will subtly start to discourage you, isolate you, and project a lot of their own stuff onto you.
That's right. Before we jump straight into the red flags, I looked up what the different types of narcissism were, and I just thought I'd just quickly share the 4 types of narcissism that there is because they are so different. So the first one that comes up is grandiose narcissism, and the traits for that is it's the most recognizable form of narcissism. Individuals with grandiose narcissism are extroverted, assertive, and confident. They often seek attention, feel superior to others, and they lack empathy. Their behavior may dominate conversations, exaggerate their achievements, and expect admiration from others. The next is vulnerable, or known as covert narcissism. And these traits are, this form of narcissism is more subtle. Vulnerable narcissists are commonly introverted. They are sensitive. They have low self-esteem. They often feel unappreciated or misunderstood, and they may harbour deep insecurities. Their behaviours appear as shy or anxious, but harbour fantasies of greatness. They might be passive-aggressive, resentful, or overly defensive. There is also malignant narcissism. The traits include malignant narcissism is a more severe and certainly more dangerous form, combining narcissistic traits with an antisocial behaviour, aggression, and sometimes paranoia. So this is on the more extreme spectrum of the condition. And the behaviours, these individuals can be manipulative, they are hostile and sadistic. They often enjoy exerting power over others, and they may have little regard for the well-being of those around them. Now, there is a fourth one, but before I jump into that one, I'm a huge, huge fan of true crime, and I can say with fair confidence in my absolute no qualification that most of the killers in the true crime that I watch are all malignant narcissists, 100%, 100%. So that is definitely the far more extreme type. And I do want to say, if you are feeling physically unsafe, if you're in Australia, there's a group called Safe Steps, and they're basically the first step for any kind of help you might need. They will also help you stay in a relationship as well as leave a relationship, depending on what you need. But I highly recommend Safe Steps. If you are not feeling 100% safe or you're not quite sure, just call them and start a conversation. And the last one is communal narcissism. The traits for communal narcissists, they derive their self-esteem from their perceived contributions to the community or a cause. They see themselves as altruistic, empathetic, and morally superior. Their behaviours, they may engage in charity work or community services, but do so primarily for recognition and admiration rather than a genuine concern for others. And I can say, as somebody who has 10 years working in the not-for-profit in humanitarian aid, I have met a lot of people who fit this type of narcissism, but that is more a type of narcissism that affects you as a business person. But yes, I'd love to jump into those red flags, specifically from the relational perspective.
Let's talk about what are the signs that you are dating a narcissist. The focus on this is really safe dating. Like this is hugely about how men and women, but especially women who are quite vulnerable to this, how they can avoid falling for a narcissist and avoid these things early on so that later on it's not as damaging. I'm very, very grateful that for me, I came out of that relationship actually, surprisingly managing a lot better than you could. Like you hear a lot of stories of women that end up staying in these relationships and in a few years they go from strong, independent, financially secure to completely isolated from their friends and their family, financially dependent. And I'll explain how that happens. And also just not knowing who they are anymore because they have been so accustomed to being put down and not mattering and also because of the gaslighting that occurs, which is actually quite severe and quite serious.
Yep.
So I'm going to talk about this first. So how do you know that you're in a, potentially abusive or toxic relationship that could end up being quite dangerous?
I mean, we've talked quite a bit about this, but the first thing is that gut feeling. I know it sounds foo-foo perhaps, but we have an innate ability as human beings to sense something's not quite right. And so if you are starting to date somebody, you really like them, they tick all the boxes, but something in your gut's just you can't quite settle, that is your body telling you that this is not the right person. I come from a background where I had a lot of insecurity about relationships. I have dated a lot. I have actually been engaged twice, and I have been in a relationship where I've been physically harmed, but I've also been in relationships where I've been emotionally harmed. And so all that baggage compounds to a now 34-year-old. Thank God I found an amazing man. But when I first started dating, and actually there's still traits left over from all those things that mean you might think, oh, no, it's just because my ex was this, or it's just because of when I was a kid this happened. So you dismiss that gut feeling. But don't dismiss it. It is actually real. And worst case scenario, you just simply miss out on something that wasn't quite right. Maybe it wasn't dangerous, but it wasn't quite right. You have to trust your gut. Your gut tells you stuff, and we don't listen to it because it's not convenient. And I know I can speak to women who are in their 30s and late 20s who are at that point in their life where constantly anxious about the fact that they're supposed to be married now. They're supposed to be on this. That word supposed to be just is the worst comment that we can say over ourselves. We're supposed to be somewhere. We're not supposed to be anywhere.
Or should.
Should be, exactly. No, these supposed to, these shoulds, they're nonsense. You are supposed to be where you're at right now.
Exactly.
That's where you're supposed to be because that's where you are. People might compromise themselves to be in relationships with these sorts of people and ignore that gut feeling because of the season of life they're in. And I tell you, it is much better to be single in your mid-30s than it is to be in a relationship with somebody who doesn't honour and respect you, who doesn't make you feel empowered, because that's just no way to live. I mean, you know what it feels like to be belittled and gaslit. And I remember being in my 20s, because as I mentioned, I had a narcissistic parent, and I'd never heard this term gaslighting, but it was the most validating and freeing thing in the world because I suddenly understood what I had experienced, that I wasn't crazy and that this was real. This person was really trying to just manipulate me to serve them. And I think that understanding what gaslighting is really, really important. And it is in that gut feeling. I think gaslighting especially because you go, wait, it's sort of like whiplash. You say something, but as I understand it, gaslighting is when you know something to be true and the narcissist will convince you that that didn't happen, that it's not real, that you are delusional and your feelings are valid and your experiences are valid, and this person is trying to turn that and make you insecure and make you unsure. And from that unsure and insecure place, it makes you vulnerable. They can create something out of that vulnerability that serves them.
Absolutely. I think the most dangerous thing about being in a relationship with a narcissist is that when you're in a relationship with somebody, you really trust that person, right? Like when you're in a relationship, you not only trust them, but you tell them everything. So you're divulging all the information about yourself, about your childhood, your wounds, your insecurities, all to that person, and also your doubts. So if you are saying to your narcissistic partner, is our relationship unhealthy? Or do you think we're in a codependent relationship? What's your partner going to say? Stay away. Of course, they're going to say, no, that's what everyone else is telling you. That's a lie. Your mum and dad don't want you to be happy, or that friend's just jealous. So I think one of the signs very early on that you can definitely trust is that if you are starting to divulge super sensitive information very, very early on, like say in the first month, and this person is like prodding you and asking you and wanting to like learn more about you. And I'm not talking about when you're dating someone and you just have chemistry and a spark and it's a healthy dynamic. I'm talking about someone that just constantly seems to be pushing you to share more information, asking you more, and inappropriate pushing boundaries. If you notice that in your gut you are feeling like your boundaries are being pushed, the discomfort is a sign, and that is a sign that
That's
that
your gut
person,
feeling.
that person might have some kind of an agenda because normal healthy relationships are when two adults feel safe. And so the other person also knows how to stop when you're not feeling safe. And they also know when to ask questions and when to just leave it for the next date.
I have an example that's coming to mind. I obviously know your ex-partner, and I've journeyed a bit of your story just by pure coincidence. It was God-driven. Remembering the first time that you introduced me to him, I think it was only the second time you'd ever met him.
Yeah.
Third time. And straight off the bat, I was like, this person is unsafe, because in our 3-hour conversation, he controlled everything. So he would basically divulge something extremely personal, extremely vulnerable, and it's just something that he had claimed to never have told anyone in his life. And it was just because I happened to work in the field. I'm like, what is this dude's agenda? Like, why is he telling me this? Because I was raised by one. I had that suspicion, I suppose.
I remember my gut feeling that very day, actually. There were red flags going off like crazy. It was like an explosion of red flags. But at the same time, there was something in my heart that really felt for him as well. And that's where that victim mentality comes out. So that's why it's so important to understand that a covert narcissist isn't going to be someone that just comes out and starts putting you down. Like, I think we need to understand that they are called a covert narcissist for a reason. They start off, they pull all of your heartstrings to the point where you're like feeling sorry for them and feeling like you almost owe it to them to help them through whatever they say they've gone through or they're going through.
And I remember you telling me that he was threatening to harm himself, and that was a strategy. That's a really common strategy, using mental health to trap the partner. He's not going to. And even if he does, it's another attempt to manipulate you. So just walk away. I mean, I can imagine because I've been there, but I can't imagine for the first time hearing that and going through that, how you can just walk away from somebody. You care about them. You see beyond just their disorder. It's probably actually worth mentioning. We probably should have mentioned this a bit earlier, but there is a difference between narcissistic behavior and the behavioral condition of a narcissist. A personality disorder. It's something diagnosable by a psychologist or psychiatrist. So there is a difference. We are all a little bit narcissistic because essentially we are all selfish. We are all a little bit unintentionally, sometimes intentionally manipulative. We all have those traits. So
just as well, something that I've learned recently is that we're born narcissistic babies. That's how they survive. Yep. But a healthy person grows up knowing that they don't need constant validation from their caregivers anymore, and they can give themselves self-validation over time and
they
reassurance.
also possess empathy and compassion, the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. And this is something that a narcissist cannot do. They really struggle to put themselves in another person's shoes. It's very, very difficult.
But they can fake it very well.
Oh, well, that's the thing. They've had to fit into society. They've had to learn to match and mask.
Absolutely. And I guess from my own experience, if I had known the signs, like say if I had listened to an episode like this or I'd like read about it, which most people don't. Most people go through life till they've personally had an experience of that, not really learning about it because it's not something that's very light and, doesn't bring a lot of joy and happiness. Yeah. But for me, like just going back to those early stages, I think one thing that I can definitely say is that the first 2 or 3 or 4 encounters with this person was full of red flags.
Absolutely.
But why and how do people like myself end up in those situations? I really want to touch on this because this will help a lot of men and women. I think one of the things is isolation. Yeah. Making sure that no matter what you are going through, whether it's a death in the family or something financially is going on in your business, surround yourself with people that will inspire you, lift you up. Don't just work from home and be alone.
Join a church.
Join a church, yeah.
Build
a community. And don't just latch on to the first person that gives you that feeling.
So narcissists have a very predatory mindset. And so he latched onto you because you were in a vulnerable place. It's really common, no matter, it could be something small. You could lose your job. You could lose a family member. You could lose your dog. Some sort of change in your life that produces the feeling of grief moving away, whatever it is. Anything that produces a vulnerability in you like that, like loss, a narcissist will come in and fill that void. They're looking for people in that situation. A light bulb goes off in their head without them even being aware of it. That says, that's my next person. If you are a person in this situation and you are listening to this podcast and you are wondering, am I in this? How did I get in this? What have I done wrong? You've done nothing wrong. You were just simply somebody who someone else took advantage of in a season of your life.
There's a term called narcissistic supply. I was his supply. And a narcissist or someone with a narcissistic, I don't want to label someone as a narcissist because I don't have the right to do that or the qualifications to do that. But someone that has narcissistic behaviors and tendencies, who's deeply wounded and insecure in themselves, they have supply. And a supply is basically someone that will give them the validation that they are unable to give themselves, that will help them feel more secure, and also someone that will make them feel good, make them look good. So if they are with someone that is more successful than them, that's more intelligent, or that is financially more stable and independent than them, someone that is empathetic, those are the type of people that they latch onto. And it doesn't have to be romantically too. I think really the key is surround yourself with good people that build you up and make you feel good when you walk away. Because if you walk away with feelings like I'm confused or this person is overbearing, those are key signs. Narcissists use people. So they are basically using their supply for their own benefit, whether it's financial benefit, whether it's to fill that void, whether it's because they are insecure. Whatever it is, it's really important that people understand if they're becoming someone's supply, that there's nothing good that will come of that. Later down the track, that person's mask is going to eventually come off. And when you see the person for who they really are, it's traumatic.
It's shocking.
They say that trauma isn't necessarily just what happens. It's actually the degree of shock or surprise that comes with it.
Trauma is relative. So before we finish today, I wanted to give a list for the listener who is questioning, am I in a narcissistic relationship? I'm going to spout off a bunch of things right now that I want you, the listener, to ask yourself, does my relationship measure against these things? So, is your partner overstepping boundaries? Are they ignoring personal space or emotional limits? One of the first things that I recommend for any person in a relationship is to instill boundaries. Boundaries are really, really important. They're the way you respect yourself. So it's really, really important. As somebody who I had to learn, in order to have a healthy relationship, I have to instill boundaries. So is your partner overstepping those boundaries or ignoring them? Love bombing. Are you experiencing an excessive amount of attention to create dependency? Belittling your accomplishments. Are they undermining your success? Do you come home and to celebrate something and they point out why it's not that big a deal?
Well, they might not even point it out. It might just be the look on their face, their energy. It just doesn't seem genuine.
Undermining.
Or they seem slightly disappointed that you've done well. A narcissist can still hide that.
And you're not going to have all these. So I'm listing these, but you may not be experienced. Don't think, oh, well, I don't have the third and seventh, so it's fine. Are they dictating your feelings? Are they telling you how you should feel? Are they creating a victim mentality, always being the wrong person? When they tell you a story of something that happened at work today, are they always the victim? Are they always the one that's been wronged? Gaslighting, which we talked about. Are they making you question your reality? Inconsistent behavior. Do they have extreme mood swings?
That's a big one.
Are they monopolizing conversation? Do they dominate discussions and make it all about them? When you are out in public, especially in a business context, I've seen people do this a lot. Mind you, it's also common in ADHD. They identify with each other by saying, oh, I've experienced this. So again, just reiterating, doesn't necessarily mean that your partner has a narcissistic personality disorder, but just highlight these things. Just ask yourself, are there more of these true than not? The next one is isolation, cutting you off from your friends and family. Now, regardless, if you are someone listening to this and that is something you're experiencing, regardless of whether they're a narcissist or just simply the relationship's unhealthy, isolation is a very dangerous trait. And if you're finding yourself separated from your family and your friendship circles and you're having to create new ones through them, I recommend that you reach out to your old friends right now. Just pick up your phone and text an old friend, text your parent, because isolation is extremely dangerous and is when you are most vulnerable. Conditional affection, so they will love and support you, but you know it's always conditional. They don't offer you unconditional love. They will do something called projection, accusing you of their own flaws, which I've seen so much in my own relationship with my narcissistic parent. And once this parent said, "I wish you had never been born." And this was about 20 minutes after telling me the reason they don't speak to their father is because they once said, "I wish you'd never been born." I was like, okay. Well, first of all, I know that's not true.
That's very hurtful though.
But their life is amazing because I was born. So I didn't know that. So that's projection. A need for validation. So they're constantly seeking praise. Now, I do want to preface, as the child of a narcissist, I need a validation in my relationship. And that's something that I'm personally having to work on because I was starved of it growing up. I actually crave it. So again, just preface, this doesn't necessarily mean anything.
It could mean everything
but it could
too.
mean everything.
Especially if you're finding that you're being told things like, "Oh, I bet no one else has ever treated you like this. I bet no one else has ever done this for you."
That's true.
Or I bet you've never felt this way with anybody else. Or getting you to like verbally confirm that what they've done is the best, or that what they've done is unique, or getting you to verbally confirm like out loud. And they're saying, "Have you ever experienced this?" Or
That's a really good point. Yeah, because I just need to hear "I love you" more often. I don't need that stuff. So that's a really good point. Thank you. That's very important. I don't think I've ever said to my husband, "I'm the best person you've ever been with," right? I don't want to know that answer.
Or "I'm the most beautiful or tall or, strong or handsome."
Yeah, no, that's true. That's a good point. Thank you for that. Does your partner lack empathy? Do they have an inability to connect with your personal emotions?
I think that's actually a really hard one because I still, till this day, do not know if the person I was in a relationship with had or faked empathy or what was real because, I mean, in my situation, it was very unique. Like this person wasn't physically abusive, so it's very, very covert. I think that this is a really, really hard one to pick because, for example, he was very good at tearing up in the middle of a conversation, again, making it all about himself, but just seemingly having empathy or emotions. But in the end, during like one of my darkest times, I noticed that he was cold and ruthless. And
it's like a switch.
Yeah, so I find that one really hard.
Yeah, I know.
But they can also can also put that on, right?
Yeah.
So that's a tricky one.
It is. It definitely is. It's one you have to look really, really closely at, I think. So I have 7 more. So something called triangulation, creating competition by comparing you to others. So that could be comments like, "I wish you would do your hair like that person," or "that girl looks so much better in that dress than I think you could." Things that make you look externally to try and appease them. Basically, just comparison. And if your partner is saying, "I wish you looked as good in that outfit as she does," then that's really horrible.
I wish you dressed like her.
Yeah. I wish you dressed like her. I wish you were at home more like so-and-so. I wish you, it could be anything. Look how great a mother she is. Look how great she is. Look at how she's running her business. She's taking care of the kids. Her husband wants nothing. I come home and you haven't cooked yet. Those sorts of things.
Yeah, it's just mean. Like it's just not good for relationships in general. But again, like if you're just seeing 1 or 2 of these in your partner, it could just be that your partner is
insecure about something.
Yeah,
I mean, need to go to therapy together.
I was going to say it's not fine, but it's definitely, and it's something to definitely discuss with them and see how they respond. And go to therapy and stuff. But if you're seeing like a lot of this, and there's like more yeses than nos,
yeah, that's right. Then be concerned because if there is more yeses than nos, then we can fairly confidently say you're in an unhealthy relationship, regardless of narcissistic or not. Yeah.
Like, for example, I remember when I was going through this list, he ticked 15 out of 20 of these. That's terrifying. When I was in the relationship, I was focusing on the 5 that he didn't and going, well, he can't be a narcissist because he doesn't do this. He doesn't physically abuse me or put me down. Yeah, and it's definitely something to pay attention to.
So sensitivity to criticism, they overreact to any critique. Backhanded compliments, the compliment sandwich, the classic, which is compliments that have a sting. So I don't.
Oh, I've got a really good one.
Yeah.
For example, you're looking a bit fat in this, but you're not fat. You're just bloated.
That is great. That is such a good example. Absolutely.
Oh, I remember hearing that, and that does not sit well with me. And I remember confronting him about it. And was there an apology? Absolutely
No,
not.
'cause-
Will you get an apology from a narcissist?
Sensitivity to criticism? No.
No, because a true narcissist will never admit that they are wrong. They are never wrong, and the only time they will apologize is during the love bombing phase.
Absolutely, 100%. The backhanded compliments lean straight into the next one, which is blame shifting, so making you responsible for their emotions. So you'll go to him and say, when you said that was really unfair, and he could shift the blame to being, you just need to work on your confidence in your own body and know that you are beautiful.
I think I remember a response very, very similar to that, like stop looking at, models on Instagram or something, where I was like, hang on, wait a minute. I was just telling you that I didn't like the comment that you made. How did you now suddenly make this about what I view on Instagram?
That's right. Exactly. Another thing you might find is interrupting or dismissing your opinions, not valuing your input. This is also human behavior, so it might not necessarily be as common. Guilt or pity manipulation. So this is something you definitely went through. Guilt or pity manipulation. So this is somebody using guilt or pity to control you. So are they oversharing some really personal details and using that as excuse for their behavior, an excuse for their outburst or comments, and they manipulate you with it? Well, you don't know what it's like to be in this situation, and So and the last one is flipping the script, making you the problem when they are confronted, which is similar to what we just said about blame shifting.
I think that for me was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yep.
Exactly like what you've just said. He started to talk about how I did something. That's a very typical, narcissistic behavior.
Absolutely. Yeah. So if I can recommend to our listeners anything just to take away just from this episode, it would be if you've heard these and you're recognizing, like Phoebe said, she had 15 out of 20. If you're concerned that you have too many, more than 50% are yes, that's my experience, I would recommend to start imposing some boundaries in your relationship right now. Write yourself a list of what those are so that you have them in print for yourself, because we tend to move the line of boundaries and they're there to push it. So draw them, make them clear, whatever they are. For my partner and I, we had boundaries such as we would always leave because we're Christian, so we don't sleep together before marriage. We had a boundary where we had to leave by 10 p.m. So whoever's house we were at, 10 p.m. Now that boundary didn't really work for us because we go out to a movie, it finishes at 11 p.m. So eventually that did move to midnight. So you can negotiate them if they're not working. But is that boundary being disrespected? Are they saying, oh, no, I'm tired, I might just sleep here, I'll sleep on the couch. Put those boundaries in writing for yourself, journal them, and tell them to your partner. And not necessarily that one, like you have to be gone by midnight. That's a silly one. You do you. And just start acknowledging when those boundaries aren't being respected, because when your boundaries aren't being respected, you're not being respected, and that's what I want. I want for a listener who is experiencing this for themselves to feel respected and honoured, as well as loved and taken care of. So that would be probably the only practical thing I would give to our listeners today after listening to this. But we will have some more episodes coming up on this topic. Like I said, whether you're the friend of somebody going through this and how to support a friend, maybe understanding a little bit more about the gaslighting and manipulation, go a bit more in depth into some of these things. And also what I think is probably most important is that we do an episode talking specifically into healing post-relationship, post-experience. How do we recover? And I can speak to it if you're like me and you have a person who is a narcissist who is still in your life and how to manage that and how to build those boundaries for yourself and to respect your own boundaries.
Thank you so much, Catlin. I absolutely loved that list. Thank you for what you've shared as well and for coming out and being vulnerable about your own experience. I hope that all the listeners that have tuned in, that you've gained something from this. Strongly suggest that if there are any terms that you've heard, like trauma bond or gaslighting, NPD, and you want to look it up to learn more, I highly suggest that if that has come up for you, that you definitely look into it and dive into it, because there is a lot of liberty and freedom on the other side. And it's also a great preventative strategy as well, even if you've never experienced that before, to actually look into it, because in life we encounter all sorts of people with all sorts of underlying motives, and we need to look after ourselves and baggage. So listeners, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm going to share a lot of links as well to some resources that you can look into in the show notes. I'm also going to share some of the definitions in the show notes as well. And stay tuned, because Catlin and I have another episode, or a few more episodes to come, that are really going to help you avoid being in these sticky situations, or even support a friend that's in a sticky situation like this. Where in our next episode, we're going to talk about the love bombing trap and also how to protect yourself, boundaries in dating. And in a further episode, we're going to talk about healing from narcissistic relationships, and also understanding gaslighting. So thank you so much for tuning in. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you guys again soon. So thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to seeing you inspired to thrive.